I never imagined a simple hug could reveal a heartbreaking secret about my daughter's life. I will never forget that day. I held her tightly, my heart pounding in my chest, oblivious to the storm gathering behind her eyes. The warmth of her small body felt so reassuring, but as I pulled back, I saw the tremor in her lower lip, the way her hands shook, as if she had just survived a blizzard and was desperately trying to thaw out. That I looked into her eyes, those big, innocent pools that once held nothing but laughter. Now they were clouded, haunted by a fear I could not comprehend. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I whispered, voice trembling. My breath caught when she turned her gaze to the floor, biting her nails, the soft sound of her teeth clicking like a metronome, counting down to something terrible. Caitlin was my everything, my joy, my pride. At 12, she had a spark that could light up the darkest room. But lately, I felt her fading, like a photograph left out in the sun, colors washed away, memories slowly disappearing. I had tried to reach her, showing up to school events, listening to her stories, but it was like talking to a wall. The distance between us grew unbearable. Flashbacks flooded my mind. I remembered the laughter we shared, the giggles over ice cream, bedtime stories filled with colors and dreams. Those beautiful, innocent days when everything felt right. But then came the silence. Friends had drifted, and I watched as she retreated into the shadows. I tried everything: gifts, outings, deep talks over warm dinners, but I felt like I was trying to catch smoke with my bare hands. That I stood there, heart racing, the silence heavy and cold. I leaned in, the air thick with tension. "Caitlin, please tell me." And in that moment, I noticed something unusual: her necklace, a silver key hanging from a chain. She always wore it, but now it seemed tarnished, the bright shine dulled, symbolizing my daughter's hidden pain. That's when she hit me with it. "Mom, I've been going to this group," she mumbled, eyes darting side to side. Each word slipped out like a secret heavy with consequence. My heart dropped. "What kind of group?" I could barely whisper the question, dread pooling in my stomach, twisting like a knife. "It's just kids like me. We talk about stuff. Things." Her voice cracked, and the walls around us seemed to close in. I felt an invisible chokehold on my chest. What things? My mind raced with possibilities. Did she mean bullying? Self-harm? I needed to know. My palms started sweating. I pushed everything down, willing my face to stay calm. But that space between us pulsed with unspoken fear, a chasm I worried we might never cross. The room felt charged with weighty truths, all the untold stories clawing to break free. What other secrets lay hidden beneath her brave little exterior? What had I missed all this time? And without thinking, I reached out, grabbing her shoulders, desperate for connection. Her body tensed, resisting my touch, and my heart shattered like glass. "Please, just don't shut me out," I cried, voice cracking, feeling my world teetering. As she glanced down, a tear rolled down her cheek, a tiny, silent confession. It struck me. I realized in horror that I had taken her for granted, always assuming she'd be all right, but was she? Before I could process it, Caitlin stepped back, the hug slipping away like grains of sand through my fingers. She turned abruptly, the weight of her secret hanging heavily between us, screaming for attention. My heart raced. How could I fix this? I wanted answers, but did I dare to ask more? Our eyes connected, and then it hit me like a punch to the gut. What if the truth shattered everything I thought I knew? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The days that followed our almost unraveled moment felt like walking through fog. Caitlin moved through our house like a ghost, slipping into her room, rarely joining me for dinner, her silence echoing through every corner. I tried to fill the void with the chatter of my own anxieties, as if speaking into the empty air would somehow draw her back into my orbit. But I felt that the weight of unsaid things loomed over us, with every tick of the clock making it more unbearable I started leaving little notes in places I thought she might find them. A simple, "I love you" slipped into her lunchbox, a smiley face drawn on her bathroom mirror. Each morning, I clung to the hope that, perhaps, one small gesture would kindle a spark in her again. But with each day passed, my hope began to fray, and I grew desperate for her to open up. One evening, after another lonely dinner, I found myself perched on the edge of her bed. It was too quiet. Even the wind had settled outside, allowing the tension to swell. I caught sight of her key necklace resting on the table, and a phantom ache washed over me. I picked it up, fingers tracing the cool metal, feeling the significance of its presence, a relic of a happier time. Moments later, Caitlin walked in, her brow furrowed. For a split second, her eyes brightened at the sight of it in my hand. But then, like a switch flicked, her face turned blank, the spark extinguished. "What are you doing?" she asked, the sting of defensiveness dripping from her voice. "I was just remembering. Can we talk, Caitlin? Please?" I deliberately kept my tone gentle, inviting. She hesitated, biting her lip as she looked at the key, then back to me. "I'm tired, Mom. Can we just not do this right now?" With every beat of her heart I couldn't touch. My own felt like it was fracturing further. "I know you're tired, sweetheart, but bottling things up is not the answer. I can't help you if you don't let me in. Sometimes it's easier that way," she whispered, sliding down onto her bed and pulling her knees up to her chest. "You wouldn't understand. Try me," I urged, as I watched her gaze drift out of the window, lost in a world of her own design. "I'm scared," she exclaimed suddenly, her voice trembling. "I feel scared all the time, and I don't want to be scared. I don't want you to see me like this." Her outburst caught me off guard. It had the intensity of a thunderstorm, and I found myself wrestling with the chaos in my chest. "Caitlin, sweet girl, I promise you I will never see you as weak. You're so strong for even sharing this. Just tell me why you're scared." She drew in a shaky breath and finally faced me, a mix of anger and vulnerability coiling in her gaze. "Because everything just feels heavy," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper, "and I'm not sure if I can carry it anymore." A horrifying realization gripped me. Then what if this was a burden she had been carrying alone for much longer than I could fathom? Swallowing past the lump in my throat, I leaned in a little closer. "What if I told you that you don't have to carry it alone? There's no shame in asking for help." In that moment, something shifted in her expression, a crack forming in her stoic mask. Just when I thought we were making progress, her eyes darted away again, betraying a battle of emotions waging in her heart. "How can I trust that, Mom? How do I know you want to just walk away if things get hard?" The question landed with the force of a tidal wave, crashing into my chest. "I want to. I promise I want to walk away. I'll be right here, no matter what," I said, feeling the truth of my words course through me, thick with love and desperation. But before I could reach out again, a low murmur came from the hallway, the unmistakable sound of a phone buzzing. We froze, both our heads snapping toward the door, as muffled voices filtered through. I heard a name, calling out almost frantically, "Caitlin." Panic nestled in my stomach as I rose to my feet. "Wait here, okay?" When I opened the door, a knot of dread twisted tighter in my gut. It was a group of girls from Caitlin's class, their faces painted with concern and urgency. "Is Caitlin here? We need to talk to her," one said, nearly breathless. The words hung in the air, and I turned back to Caitlin, who watched from her bed with terror in her eyes. "Caitlin," I said softly, trying to keep my voice steady. The expression on her face told me everything. The once cozy sanctuary of her room now felt like the edge of a cliff, and I knew in that moment that some secrets don't just lie within individuals. They're woven between the lives around us, threatening to upend everything. "Mom, wait," she shouted, and every sense in my body told me we were about to face the storm together. But I stood there, torn between my instinct to shield her and the realization that she might not want to be shielded anymore. The door swung wide open, and the air thickened with an unspoken urgency that pressed against my chest. Caitlin's terrified gaze leapt from me to the girls, and I could see the inner struggle playing out on her face, a desperate need for connection battling with the fear of exposure. "Please," one of the girls urged, her voice trembling with anxiety. "It's about that post. It's gone too far. We need Caitlin." I stepped back instinctively, letting them in, not fully understanding the weight of their words, but sensing that the ground beneath us was shifting. "What post?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Just give us a minute," another girl said, sidestepping me as they approached Caitlin, who stayed rooted on her bed, an island of isolation in a sea of concern. The moment was surreal, as the walls of her sanctuary closed in on us, forcing memories of laughter and ease to collide with this storm brewing in her heart. I felt a deep, profound sense of helplessness wash over me. She had been slipping away for so long, and now, it seemed, she was on the verge of being swept away entirely. Caitlin shook her head, retreating further into her own cocoon. "I don't want to talk about it," she murmured, though the pleading in her eyes betrayed her. The girls exchanged glances, concern stitched into their young faces. "We're not here to judge you," one said softly, stepping closer. "We're here because we care." "It's not your fault." My gut clenched as I pieced together fragments of their conversation. Was it about bullying? Something she had felt too ashamed to admit? I felt the color drain from my face. The secrets we had been so desperately trying to unearth now spiraled dangerously close to the surface, threatening to spill over and drown us. Caitlin's voice broke through my tumultuous thoughts like a fragile whisper. "I don't want to be some kind of I don't want you guys to think I'm weak." "Caitlin, you're not weak," another girl said vehemently. "You're amazing. You've always been our strength. But hiding this, it's making it harder for you." I could see her resolve crumbling, like the ground beneath a collapsing dam. "But I don't know how to fix it," she breathed, and in that moment, something inside her began to shatter that I stepped forward, needing nothing more than to hold her, to give her a safe place to unravel whatever had been binding her heart so tightly. But the girls crowded her as though formed into a protective barrier, and I felt a sharp pang of inadequacy. "Caitlin, please," I said gently, desperate for her to look at me. "You don't have to go through this alone." The girls formed a small circle around her, each one reaching out, their hands grazing her arms like threads weaving a tapestry of empathy. But as they spoke, their voices became a pleasant hum that I almost couldn't understand beneath my heartbeat. Suddenly, Caitlin pressed her hands to her face, the gesture shrouded in sorrow, unsure if she was feeling relief or despair. I can't deal with this right now. You don't understand." Her voice trembled with a mixture of anger and hurt, and there it was again, the fear of being trapped in her own skin, of being pushed to the edge by a world that just wouldn't let her breathe. The middle girl reached out, enveloping Caitlin in a soft hug, the kind of embrace that pulled the walls down brick by brick. "We're here. You can trust us, please," she whispered, and in that moment, something shifted. A glimmer of the brightness that had once filled my daughter's life crept past the haze. But then, right at that moment, her phone erupted with a new notification. A harsh, bright sound that shattered the fragile silence, and I watched as Caitlin's entire demeanor shifted back into an icy resolve. Her face paled, and, even with the girls surrounding her, she looked utterly lost. "No," she gasped, so softly, but it carried the weight of 1,000 shattered dreams. "Not now." I felt my stomach twist. What was happening? What hidden storm was brewing just beneath the surface? And what role had I played in keeping her locked away in this cage of silence? Before I could react, her hand shot out, fumbling for her phone. She swiped the screen, and for a split second, the world froze. I dared to step closer as I leaned in to peek at the glowing screen, and what I saw struck like lightning. It was a message, a flood of terrible words hurled at her. A collective breath caught in my throat as I absorbed the poison pouring from every line. "Not even your mom wants you," one haunting message mocked. "Why don't you just disappear?" Caitlin's features twisted in anger and shame, a tempest raging behind her eyes. My heart stuttered, and the room closed in on me. I felt the walls tremble. It was painfully clear I'd focused too much on the struggle of communication when the battle she was losing wasn't with me at all. The hashed words on the screen surged through our space, threatening to blow apart all the fragile positivity that had been painstakingly built. In her eyes, I saw the remnants of joy vanish, swept away by the tide of cruelty. I turned back to the girls, whose expressions were filled with shock and concern, each of them sharing soft murmurs as they processed the painful truth together. They had been right to come, hadn't they? This was no longer just about Caitlin and me. It was a larger battle against a world full of shadows and torment. The fight was real, and there I stood, helpless, trying to figure out how to protect her from the storm that whipped around us. But the realization hit like an icy wind. I couldn't fight this battle alone, either. Caitlin, I finally said, my voice taut with emotion, we'll face this together. We have to fight back against these words. You're not alone, I won't let them take away your light. But Caitlin stared blankly at the message, tears spilling silently down her cheeks, and my heart ached as the window of hope cracked open again, yet just as quickly slammed shut. Then came the painful silence that followed, the weight of unspoken truths heavy in the air. It was a silence thick with the promise of the fight that lay ahead. As I reached out to her, desperate to bridge the divide, the phone buzzed again. A chill swept through me. Another name, or perhaps the absence of one. Before I could catch my breath, Caitlin's expression shifted yet again. Mom, I can't, she whispered. I don't think I can handle another thing. Caitlin's trembling hands dropped to her sides, and the phone slipped from her grip, landing on the carpet with a soft thud that echoed in the charged silence. My heart raced as I braced myself, knowing the storm of emotions brewing around us could burst through at any moment. Panic and uncertainty wrapped around me like a suffocating embrace. What do you mean you can't handle it? I asked urgently, as if those words could somehow disrupt the darkness that loomed over her. Whatever it is, Caitlin, we can face it together. The girls around her began to shift, uncertainty creeping into their faces as they sensed the depth of Caitlin's pain. I could feel their worry, their desire to carry her burden, pressing in like a gentle tide that could either pull her back to safety or drown her deeper in sorrow. I don't want to be here anymore, Caitlin finally confessed, her voice cracking like dry twigs underfoot. The sincerity of her words struck me hard, as though she had pulled the world from under our feet. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just a fleeting emotion. This was a cry for help that cut through the chaos surrounding us. Please, just don't say that, I replied, my voice laced with desperation. You mean everything to me. You're my light, and I can't lose you. We will figure this out, I promise. But as I spoke, I felt a profound emptiness within her. A chasm that had been formed by years of hurtful taunts and isolation, a place that maybe I had helped carve by not seeing the warnings all along. I don't want to cry anymore, Caitlin whispered, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and vulnerability. I want to stop feeling like I'm the problem, like I'm the one no one wants. The words hit hard, like icy darts piercing through my heart. I had sometimes felt that way, too, caught in the complexities of life and the expectations of being a perfect parent. But I had never imagined my daughter felt the same despair, as if her worth was collateral in a world that continued to judge her harshly. One of the girls stepped forward. Caitlin, you don't have to carry this alone. We're here, and those messages, they're lies. They don't know you like we do. The strength in her voice sparked something, a glimmer of connection that pierced through Caitlin's fog of despair. They hurt, though, Caitlin replied, her words barely rising above a whisper. It feels like 1,000 knives every time I see them. Like I've been stripped bare in front of everyone. I know it feels that way, another girl chimed in, her voice soft but persistent. But you are stronger than you realize, Caitlin. Look how far you've come. You opened your heart. That's a brave thing to do. Caitlin faltered, glancing around at her friends, their eyes filled with a warm sincerity that made her shake from the rawness of the moment. I could see her weighing their words like feathers against the weight of bricks she had been carrying for too long. That doesn't change what was said, Caitlin said, a tremor in her voice. Words are powerful. They stick, you know. They cling to you in ways you can't shake off. The gentle reminder flickered through my mind, dragging along buried memories of moments in my own life when harsh words had left imprints that echoed for years. I hadn't witnessed the full impact on my girl until now, and guilt flooded me as I understood the depth of her wound. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again. Instinctively, I reached to grab it, but Caitlin was faster, snatching it away from me. Don't, she shouted, and in that instant, I felt how fragile this moment was, all of us teetering on the edge of a cliff. The phone screen glowed with new notifications. I could see another name, perhaps another attack poised to strike. Caitlin, I urged, it's just a message. It doesn't define you. My words landed deftly, wrapped in the tension of the room, but she looked down at the screen, her face turning ashen. But what if it's true? What if I'm just disappointing everyone? What if I'm always going to be this loser? Stop, the middle girl said forcefully, her expression a mixture of determination and support. You are not a loser. Let us read it together. It will help we won T let them win. As a collective, we stepped closer, a united front. Caitlin, visibly trembling, held her phone out hesitantly. You sure about that? She asked, her voice quaking like autumn leaves in a restless wind. Yes, her friend replied, resolutely. We'll face this with you. We'll prove them wrong. With one shove of courage, Caitlin tapped on the message. It opened a tidal wave of emotions, and we leaned in together, hearts racing as the darkness unveiled itself again. The words flashed across the screen, a collage of derogatory terms, and I felt my chest tighten in response to the venom and hatred laid bare. My eyes narrowed on the messages, focused on eliminating the power they held. A sense of foreboding pricked at my consciousness. I could feel the chilling tendrils of despair clawing at Caitlin, wrapping around her heart like an insidious vine. Caitlin, I murmured, reaching for her hand. We're right here. This is just a moment. It can't control you. Tears streamed from her eyes as she clenched the phone tightly, the weight re-emerging, pressing down on her fragile spirit. I don't want to be me anymore, she breathed, the words spilling from her lips like a dam breaking. And then, without warning, the gentle hum of her phone vibrated again, this time carrying a name with it. A name that made the floor shake beneath me, one I had long feared would resurface. The girls froze, their glances darting toward Caitlin, who stared glassy-eyed at the screen, her mind whirling. My heart raced as I recognized the name, a ghost of the past I had hoped would remain buried. Caitlin, I managed to say as my breath caught. That name I thought we wouldn't have to think about them again, but before I could finish, Caitlin's face blanched, the haunted look in her eyes sharpening in a way that made everything else fade. The truth threatened to crush me as she whispered in a choke of disbelief. Mom, why are they back? The room held a weight that felt unbearable, as if the very air had thickened with impending dread. The faint rustle of Caitlin's friends shifting uncomfortably echoed in my ears, but I barely registered their presence. All I could see was Caitlin, blinking back tears and clenching her phone, her fragile spirit hanging by the thinnest thread. Mom, why are they back? She repeated, her voice barely above a whisper, each word laced with confusion and fear. It was as if my entire past had resurfaced, bringing with it a tide of regrets I had thought long buried. Time seemed to unravel as I struggled to find the right words to shield her from whatever awaited on that screen. Whatever innocence Caitlin had carried was teetering on the brink, and in that moment, I realized how ill-prepared I truly was to navigate this turbulence. The name on the phone belonged to someone I had fought hard to distance myself from, a relic of a past that had haunted me for years. Diego. Caitlin, I began, trying to steady my quaking voice, but the weight of my thoughts pulsed louder. I stepped toward her, my heart racing, a lump forming in my throat. It's complicated. I thought what? She cut through the chaos, her frustration pouring out like heat from a brewing storm. You thought they'd just disappear? That we could pretend this didn't happen? The anger in her voice pierced deeper than any words of hate I had ever encountered. I had become so consumed with shielding her from my past that I hadn't prepared her for this inevitable confrontation. Each tearing sentence felt like layers of regret being pulled back, leaving raw, painful truths exposed. Then came the sound of her friends, their supportive murmurs breaking through the thick silence. Caitlin, it's going to be okay. You have us. They formed a comforting barrier, but I could sense their confusion, their unease, a shared concern for a friend whose world just tilted. I don't even want to look, Caitlin mumbled, the phone trembling in her hands like a fragile bird. What if it's another lie? What if they're just trying to get at me again? A desperate urge to shield her overcame me. I'll handle this, I said quickly, reaching for her phone. But she pulled away, her eyes shimmering with a mixture of defiance and indecision. No, she cried. You don't get to make this decision for me, Mom. I'm the one who has to live with this. Let me see. So, I stepped back, feeling powerless yet again, just as I had in those haunted discussions before, a cycle of decisions I had faced and failed to overcome. I nodded slowly, conceding to her, desperate for her to know she had agency in this moment. In a tremulous heartbeat, Caitlin took a deep breath, seemingly steeling herself against the tempest about to strike. With a reluctant swipe, she opened the message. I could see the change in her expression before she even spoke, the flicker of panic, the tightening of her jaw. Words flashed across the screen. Hurtful taunts, reminders of past betrayals, twisted fractions of truth that cut at her carefully constructed facade. My heart sank as I wanted nothing more than to reach into that sunken darkness and pull her back into the light. Just lies. Just venom, she murmured, her voice thick with despair. But beneath that despair, something sparked for a fleeting moment, a twinge of resilience fighting to surface. Caitlin, I managed, feeling like I was swimming against strong currents. You know you are so much more than what they say. You have power over their words. You are your own person. As the tears fell more heavily now, I rushed to stand beside her, wrapping my arm around her shoulders in desperate reassurance. You are loved. You're surrounded by people who support you, no matter what they say. Caitlin leaned against me just as her friends shifted closer, each of them squeezing her hands in cat-like tenderness. And in that moment, something indefinable settled in the pit of my stomach, tentative hope mixed with dread. Look, one friend said softly, reaching to offer Caitlin a napkin from her backpack, breaking through the emotional whirlpool that tightened around us. We can turn this around. Let us respond. We want to let them have the last word. The suggestion twinkled like faint stars in the darkest night. Yes, Caitlin nodded slowly, her expression softening as she shifted to face her friends. Maybe that could help. Despite the weight of uncertainty still heavy on her heart, a dawning realization flickered in her eyes, like someone finding fire in the ashes. But just as a bond of warmth began to blossom, a new notification drew our attention, its tone interrupting the fragile moment. The screen glowed again with a message that sent a chill drifting through the room. What now? Caitlin muttered, frustration morphing into alarm. As I was ready to read the notification, I glanced at her face, pale, tight with anxiety, and then back at the glowing device. I knew whatever was written next could either cement her fortitude or unravel her dignity. With my heart pounding, I reached for the phone. But Caitlin stopped me, her hand trembling. Let it go, Mom, she whispered, a fierce determination in her trembling voice. This time, I want to see it for myself. The determination radiating from her brought a fresh wave of pride, but the trepidation clinging to my heart lingered. Whatever revelation awaited would require courage I was desperately hoping she possessed. With a slow breath that echoed the gravity of the moment, Caitlin tapped upon the screen. I held my breath as the world around us vibrated with possibilities, ready to erupt in triumph or despair. One message could change everything again. And just like that, my fear began to solidify into an unfamiliar understanding. There would be no way to escape this spiral until the truth beneath the surface was finally unearthed. But as she read, her eyes widening, it rapidly became clear that the truth would be more than she ever bargained for. Caitlin's face transformed in the flickering glow of her phone. The vibrant colors of youthful innocence faded into a monochrome palette of confusion and pain. She took a shaky breath, her lips parting in a way that terrified me. Time came to a standstill as she scanned the message, her brows contorting in disbelief. What is it? I asked, though a knot of dread formed in the pit of my stomach. The silence stretched out like a thin wire waiting to snap, and I could almost hear the collective inhale of her friends around us, mirroring my own anticipation. Just let me read it, Caitlin muttered, her voice a low tremor. The atmosphere was dense with tension as she began to absorb every word, her expression rotating from shock to anger, disappointment to something even deeper, betrayal. I could feel the floor shifting underfoot. Her support group felt that too. They instinctively squeezed her hands tighter. It was a lifeline tossed into turbulent waters, but even from my vantage point, I could tell it was becoming futile as Caitlin's heart wrestled with an unforgivable reality. Suddenly, she released a breath that cracked like glass. They were right, she finally whispered, her eyes glistening. About everything. The very essence of her hurt tore through the air, and I instinctively reached for her. But Caitlin recoiled as if my touch might burn her. I felt the fracture expanding, threatening to envelop us both. My heart pounded harder, begging me to bridge the emotional distance between us, but the weight of my past hung heavy in the silence. What do you mean? I stammered, searching for clarity, trying to find a foothold on this quaking ground. Caitlin, no matter what they say, you know it's not true. They twist the truth to hurt you. Her hands fell limp, and what little hope remained in the room slowly began to dissipate. Mom, she said, her voice just above a sigh, look at what they said. With a shaky hand, she turned her phone toward me, revealing the screen, but I couldn't bring myself to read it. Each syllable felt like it would etch itself into my memories forever. Instead, I glanced at her friends. They were equally bewildered, caught in the whirlpool of fear and disbelief. We can reply, one suggested, her voice wavering. This doesn't define you, Caitlin. But Caitlin didn't seem to hear her. Instead, she stared into the distance, lost somewhere between the weight of her sorrow and the shimmering remnants of hope that her friends were trying to clutch to her. It says I'm not good enough. Her eyes glazed over. That I'll never be. The comment was a knife twisted deeper into my chest. This was something I had feared, tracing back to my own insecurities, my own failures as a parent. Caitlin, where is this coming from? You are so much more than what they say. I insisted, each word laced with desperation. It doesn't matter what you or I think. She spat, a maelstrom of anger joining her grief. They're right about me. I'll never be perfect for you. The resonating implication of her words cut through me like icy shards. She didn't just feel hurt. She felt unworthy, and that realization clawed its way up from my stomach to my throat. I had spent so many years trying to lift her up, yet here she was, drained of hope, convinced of her inadequacies. Caitlin, listen to me, I said, bending closer to her, my voice thickening with emotion. You don't have to be perfect. I don't want you to be. You're my daughter, and I love you for who you are, not who they want you to be. She blinked hard, then let out a shaky breath, the tears now flowing freely. But it's hard to see past that. They make me believe I need to be them to fit in, to deserve love, to deserve you. In that moment, I wanted to shout, to scream at the injustice of it all, the unfairness of a world that would strip away the beauty and complexity of Caitlin's spirit. A world that seemed to thrive on tearing her down. We'll overcome this, I promised, although I felt my confidence waver as soon as I uttered the words. Just then, another message dinged. A chill skated down my spine as I looked at Caitlin, who stiffened again, fear painted across her features. What now? As she opened the latest notification, I caught a glimpse, and my heart dropped. The words were sharp and precise. You might want to sit down for this, Caitlin. You're not who you think you are. The room plunged into a deafening silence as a collective gasp echoed off the walls. Caitlin's expression shifted, confusion now mingling with pure dread. The depth of her pain turned to an unsettling curiosity that made my skin crawl. Caitlin, I started to reach for the phone again, but my hand stopped midair as she threw it down onto the couch and clutched her head, tears streaming as the realization overshadowed her face. What do they mean? I don't know, honey, I murmured, standing in between wanting to console her and needing to understand what this all meant. Suddenly, I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders as I bore the tremendous burden of knowledge, wrenching between my love for her and my own dark past entwined with this unfolding drama. The room plunged into chaos, her friends exchanging frantic glances and hushed whispers, their innocence tainted by the gravity of the moment. The air thickened with unspoken worries, ripped apart by the uncertainty of Caitlin's next move. And amid the stark expressions of disbelief, something entirely new fluttered beneath the surface, a growing sense of impending revelation, a terrifying reality wave that promised to shed light on everything. Just as Caitlin's breaths came in ragged gasps, I steadied myself, knowing all too well how much the truth could fracture or heal. In the flash of that moment, I realized we had come to a precipice, a cliff where our lives hung in the balance, and the next message could very well expose secrets that would shake the foundations of our existence. The universe seemed to hold its breath. I could feel Caitlin's heart racing next to mine, and there we stood, on the brink of a truth that would forever change our lives. The silence in the room was suffocating, punctuated only by Caitlin's shallow breaths. I could feel the tremor in my hands as I shifted my weight from one foot to the other, my mind racing for a way to alleviate the growing sense of dread. There was no guidebook for moments like this, no easy answers etched into the fibers of our being. How can I help you? I whispered, desperate for a bridge to close the chasm that now separated us. My eyes searched hers, hoping to find even a flicker of trust amidst the storm of her emotions. Caitlin seemed to shrink into herself, the weight of the accusations draining what little color remained in her cheeks. "I don't know if you can," she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if I really am everything they say? What if I'm not who I think I am?" A heavy lump lodged itself in my throat as I fought against the urge to surrender to despair. I carefully approached her again, this time crouching down to her level, hoping to connect. "You are so much more than their words. Please, you have to believe that. Remember the time you helped that little boy in the park? You went out of your way just to make him smile." This time, she looked up, a flicker of memory dancing behind her stormy eyes. "He was having a bad day," she murmured, almost to herself. "I wanted to cheer him up. And that's exactly who you are," I urged, feeling just a little emboldened. "You shine light into the lives of others. Those ugly words can never define the beautiful soul you possess." But Caitlin shook her head, her expression splintering at the edges. "That's not what they say. They said I'm broken, that I'll never be fixed." Broken. The term echoed in my mind, and the weight of it pressed like a stone against my heart. Who said that? Just tell me who they are. I felt a surge of anger stir within me, a protective instinct swathed in anxiety. "The message didn't he say?" Caitlin replied, her eyes drifting down as she wrung her hands together. "But it might be someone I know. What if it's true?" Before I could think better of it, my phone buzzed on the couch, startling both of us. The room went utterly still again. I reached for it, but Caitlin was already looking down at her phone. It was another notification. "Don't look at it, please. It's too much." But curiosity had already gripped her, and the next thing I knew, she was scrolling through her messages. I locked my gaze on her as the happiness that had once illuminated her face began to dim with each word she absorbed. "Caitlin, please," I said, dread pooling in my stomach. "Step away from it. Don't let it consume you further." "It's like I'm trapped," she said, her voice cracking. "And the walls just keep closing in." I reached out, ready to pull her close. Yet she drew away again, a delicate flower retreating from harsh winds. Frustration bubbled within me as I wrestled with the helplessness of the situation. I longed to take her pain, to shield her from the torment that had her ensnared. "You are stronger than this," I implored, a pleading tenderness coloring my tone. "You have so much ahead of you, so much to look forward to." Suddenly, one of her friends, a bubbly girl named Jenna, reached out and placed a gentle hand on Caitlin's shoulder. "I believe in you, Caitlin, and I'm not going anywhere." Caitlin looked up, surprised by the unexpected kindness. The shimmer of gratitude was there for just a moment, perhaps enough to spark a flicker of hope. "You all care, of course we do," Jenna exclaimed, punctuating her statement with a soft squeeze. "You're not alone, no matter what they say. We fight together." For the briefest second, Caitlin allowed her heart to crack open just enough to let in the warmth of friendship. But the walls still held strong, and I felt the tautness in the room rebound, thicker than ever. This dance of emotion, the kindness colliding with the stinging hurt, felt like an unsteady balance on a tightrope, where one misstep could mean disaster. "Please, Caitlin," I whispered again. Desperation knotted within my pleas. "Give me one chance to show you. Let us dig deeper. We can figure this out together." Caitlin's breath hitched, her gaze returning to the floor. What if digging deeper only brings more hurt? Before I could respond, there was yet another ding from her phone. The air around us seemed to crackle with a heavy tension, as if a new avalanche of revelations was about to arise. Slowly, she brought the phone to her face, and I braced myself for the fallout. I held my breath as she gasped sharply, her face blanching of color. "What now?" I knelt closer, my heart pounding like a war drum. They sent me a picture." Her voice shook as she turned the screen toward me. Shock settled deep in my bones as I glimpsed the image. It was a grainy photo, and it made my stomach churn. It wasn't just a betrayal of words anymore. This was a breach of trust that splintered like glass. I felt my own heart drop, realizing what they were implying. "That's not possible," I stammered, staring between the screen and Caitlin's terrified eyes. "It can't be true. I don't know what to believe anymore," she whispered back, cradling her phone like it was a fragile secret about to shatter everything we understood. In that moment of despair, as I fought against the rising tide of panic, it was clear that we had crossed a threshold. A gaping chasm of confusion, and each lingering word, image, and unkind sentiment had thrust Caitlin deeper into a nightmare of her own design. And there we stood again, at the edge of an uncovering truth, one that could forever alter the very fabric of our lives. The air around us felt electric, charged with the somber weight of what lay ahead. The question hanging in the air screamed with uncertainty. Would this cruel revelation be the crux that would finally reveal who Caitlin truly was, or would it fracture everything we built together? The room had transformed into a cocoon of dread, where every breath felt like an echo of our unspoken fears. Caitlin's eyes were glassy, her fingers trembling over the phone as if it were a live wire, sparking with unknown possibilities. I could hardly process what lay before us. Maybe it's a mistake, I murmured, desperately grasping for hope. There are so many ways to manipulate photos. You remember when Jenna did that last month? All those filters? A weak smile flickered across Jenna's face, but Caitlin remained unmoved, the weight of uncertainty anchoring her to the ground. They wouldn't lie about something like this, Caitlin said, her voice barely more than a whisper. Pain radiated from her gaze, dulling the small light of relief I had fought so hard to fan. They want me to suffer. They want me to see, to feel the truth. I reached out to touch her, my palm against her arm, warm and steady. Caitlin, you don't have to face this alone. We can confront whoever is behind this, together. We can demand answers. Her body felt like iron beneath my hand, rigid and taut with fear. Jenna squeezed Caitlin's shoulder again, an anchor amidst the storm. You've got us. We believe in you. And if this is true, we'll help you. Help me do what? Caitlin interrupted, her voice breaking as an awful realization flickered in her eyes. What if I'm not the person I thought I was? What if they're right? I feel like I'm teetering on the edge of something horrible. Each word of Caitlin's pierced through me like a knife. I wanted to cry out and tell her how loved she was, how no one, absolutely no one, could define her except for her own heart. You are more than this moment, Caitlin. You're fierce, generous, and kind. This doesn't erase all of that. But what if it's true? She asked again, her whisper filled with a deeper sense of resignation. I knew these were questions even I couldn't answer. I realized that as Caitlin was teetering on the edge of despair, shadows of doubt loomed large, ready to swallow her whole. Silence enveloped us again, thick and suffocating. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again, breaking through the silence. I looked down to see a message from my own mother, my heart racing with anxious thoughts. We had just been talking about Caitlin's situation, and I felt the need to keep the lines of communication open. However, that impulse vanished when I glanced up again. A figure stood outside the window, shrouded in twilight shadows, who stole my breath. My heart twisted painfully as realization struck that it was a familiar form of figure I had not seen in years. Jake, Caitlin's estranged father. Caitlin, I whispered, urgency pushing my voice higher. He's here. Your dad is here. Her eyes widened. A mix of disbelief and fear etched across her features. Dad, she managed to rasp out, as if tasting the unfamiliar sound of the word. My heart sank at the thought of how unprepared she was for this confrontation. I had hoped we could navigate her darkest moments without the specter of unresolved familial issues complicating everything. Without waiting for further disbelief to seal her in, I rushed to the door and flung it open. Jake stood there, but there was no welcoming thrill, only cold tension draped over the space like a shroud. Where have you been? I managed, the words bursting forth like an unwanted interrogation. You've been absent from her life, and now you show up? At a time like this? I know she's hurting, he said, his voice low and pained. I didn't want to come back like this. Then why are you here? I pressed, my anger igniting anew. She doesn't need another layer of complexity right now. I'm not here to hurt her, he replied, a hint of sincerity making its way into his expression. I just want to talk to Caitlin. Please. As anger warred with compassion in me, I ached for Caitlin's well-being. I turned back to her, standing frozen like a deer caught in the headlights. Her eyes darted between me and Jake, fear and confusion warring in her heart. Caitlin, I began, wanting to shield her from one more tumult. But before I could finish, Caitlin pushed past me and stepped toward Jake, allowing a wave of unguarded hurt to wash over her face. You left, didn't you? When I needed you most. You have every right to be angry, he replied softly, his voice cracking. But I came back because I need to explain to clear my conscience. As they stood eye to eye, heartbreak enveloped the space, chaos and comfort colliding like thunder and lightning. Caitlin's shoulders shook as she fought against the swell of emotions, and I felt a hot tear slip down my cheek for the pain she carried in that moment. Even the simplest gestures felt like a labyrinth of unsaid truths. Then, in an unexpected gesture, Jake stepped forward and enveloped her in his arms, as if he were trying to knit together the frayed pieces of their shattered relationship. "Caitlin, please," he whispered, voice trembling with uncharacteristic vulnerability. "I never meant to abandon you." But Caitlin stood stock still, neither returning the embrace nor pushing him away. I stood frozen, every instinct telling me to intervene, yet feeling the delicate balance of opportunity and hurt poised on the cusp of their fragile reunion. What was meant to be a simple hug turned into a heartbreaking revelation, one that threatened to unravel her even further. Uncertainty hung in the air, thick and heavy, as I grappled with the weight of their collision, wondering if kindness in this moment would bring the healing they both desperately needed or if it would only deepen their wounds. Caitlin stood still, her heart pounding in her chest like a drum signaling the arrival of a storm. The warmth of Jake's embrace felt foreign and wrong, a reminder of the holes left by his absence that still festered in her soul. Part of her wanted to lean into it, to surrender to a fleeting moment of safety, but the other part felt raw and exposed a flame touched with water, its very essence flickering. The scent of familiarity wafted around them, swirling in the air and grounding Caitlin momentarily in childhood memories of laughter and warmth, before it spiraled back to memories of abandonment and heartache. She clutched at her own arms, the flesh beneath her fingers feeling like a tether to her reality, a barrier against the past that was threatening to seep into the moment. "Why now?" she finally whispered, her voice trembling with every syllable. "You come back when everything is falling apart, when I'm facing something I can't even understand." Her eyes sparkled with sorrow and unshed tears, reflecting the complex emotions battling within her. "I know I'm too late," Jake began, taking a step back to release her, though the hurt in his eyes mirrored her own. "I wasn't strong enough to stay before. But I need you to know that I want to be here now. I can't change the past, but you can't erase it either." The words spilled from Caitlin's lips like an unchecked tide, tears spilling over as the anger and confusion she had buried collided with the surface. "You missed everything. All my firsts, my good days and my bad. And now, with this news," she gestured vaguely at the world closing in around them, "I don't even know who I am. You don't get to walk in like it's nothing and pretend we can fix this." Jake's shoulders sagged, remorse etched across his face. "I'm not asking for forgiveness now. I hope to be part of your life again, to help you fight whatever this is you're facing. Please, Caitlin, why should I trust you? You left when I needed you the most." The words dripped with each of Caitlin's heartbeats, urgency intertwining with rage, a mounting crescendo that threatened to explode. If sensing the growing tension, Jenna stepped in closer, her eyes darting between Caitlin and Jake. "The past is painful, but sometimes it's the connection that can help pull us through unbearable times. Maybe he can help?" She gently placed her hand on Caitlin's back, offering a fragile yet steadying presence. "Or maybe," I intervened, trying to keep my own emotions in check, "maybe we should focus on what is pressing right now. We have no answers, only more questions." The air thickened around us as Caitlin drew in a shaky breath, her doubt a tangible thing. "I can't, this is too much," she choked out, and in that flicker of vulnerability, a small ray of understanding shone through the tension that I stepped closer to her, brushing her arm reassuringly. "I know you feel lost right now, but you're not alone. We will stand with you, no matter what happens next." Caitlin looked between us, the weight of choice settling on her shoulders like a cloak. The ghosts of her past lingered, but amidst all of the pain, Jenna's words ignited a tiny candle of hope. Was it possible that maybe, just maybe, Jake could be a source of strength instead of another reminder of her vulnerabilities? Jake's expression softened, his eyes shimmering with something akin to remorse. "I'm not expecting everything to be fixed right away, Caitlin. I just want you to know you can lean on me if you need to." Before she could respond, The tension in the room broke as the doorbell rang with sudden urgency. We all turned, hearts lurching, as anticipation layered with dread. It was the kind of interruption that felt less like a relief and more like the precursor to another storm. Should I get it? I offered hesitantly, glancing back at Caitlin, desperate to shield her from whatever might follow. Yes, Caitlin nodded weakly, tearing her eyes away from what my heart believed was an unexpected rekindling of family. Let us just get through one thing at a time. I turned to walk toward the door, a sense of foreboding brewing within me. As I reached for the doorknob, I swallowed hard, trying to brace myself for whatever was on the other side. But what awaited us would shatter our already fractured reality. The sight of a police officer, grim and stoic, standing at the threshold. "Is this the residence of Caitlin Evans?" he asked, his tone void of warmth, filled instead with an unsettling seriousness that sent a shiver down my spine. Caitlin stepped forward instinctively, confusion and dread painted across her face. "Yes, why? What is going on?" The officer shifted his gaze across the room, landing on Caitlin with an intensity that pulled the air from my lungs. "We need to speak with you about the recent allegations regarding your past. Can you come with me?" Shock and horror washed over us like a tidal wave, plunging Caitlin into yet another abyss of uncertainty. I felt my heart plunge into darkness alongside her as I grasped frantically for her hand, holding on perhaps for dear life. In that moment, we were teetering once more, on the brink of a revelation that could redefine everything we thought we knew. Could this be the truth that would finally unravel Caitlin's world? And would Jake be enough to catch her when she fell if she fell? The gravity of the moment enveloped us, pressing against my chest like a vice. I stood frozen at the door, my heart racing as my mind scrambled to piece together what this could possibly mean for Caitlin. She seemed to hold her breath in the stillness, fear and confusion swirling in her eyes, and I couldn't help but want to shield her from whatever storm awaited beyond the threshold. "Caitlin," I started, but my voice faltered as I stepped back, giving her space to confront the reality that had just crashed into her carefully constructed world. For all our attempts to support her, from sorting through the noise of friends and messages, this was a tempest I had never anticipated. "Allegations?" Caitlin echoed, and for a moment, the bravado she had clung to began to unravel before our eyes. "What allegations? I don't understand. What do you want from me?" The officer's demeanor remained unyielding, and his silence screamed all the things Caitlin feared most. She stood at the edge of discovery. Exposed, NRAW.as she stood there. Another world opened up beyond this one, a world of whispers that had been brewing, unseen. I wanted to reach out and comfort her, to soothe the tremors in her heart, but the air crackled with tension that insisted I stay back. Suddenly my own heart ached with the weight of our losses. Our struggles, it was all interwoven, the past threading its way like a shadow into our present. The officer continued, his voice steady yet devoid of warmth. "We just want to speak to you about things that have come to light. It's crucial we get to the bottom of this." I could see the flicker of sadness in his eyes, an unspoken acknowledgement of the pain we were all tangled in. "About what?" Caitlin pressed again, desperation lacing her tone. "What accusation?" She stepped back, her shoulders curling in on themselves as the world began to cave in around her. Jake stood rigid, 1,000 unspoken apologies stacked in the silence, desperate to break free but unsure how, while Jenna and the other girls formed a small gathering of anxious hope just behind her. "It was reported that there are harmful messages circulating concerning you," the officer finally said, his words slow and measured. "And we need to ask you about your involvement. Your safety is our priority." I bristled at the thought. How could anyone think that Caitlin had any involvement in this? The very notion ignited a fire within me, a protective instinct blaring for justice, the kind born of maternal love. But as I glanced at Caitlin, I could see the innocent light fading from her eyes. I can't," Caitlin managed, shaking her head as panic set in. "This isn't me. You've got it all wrong. I've been targeted. I'm the one who is being hurt. It's not my fault." The officer's expression softened for a brief moment. "I understand this is difficult, but the situation at hand is serious. We want to help." "Help?" Caitlin spat, her anger lifting her chin as if defiance was the last vestige of strength she could cling to, and I wanted to pour every ounce of love into her. "You can't help me if you think I am part of this." You have to believe me. Caitlin. Jake's voice cut through the rising tension, drawing her gaze. You have to tell them the truth. No matter how painful or fear-inducing it may be, the truth is all that matters now. But my heart twisted at the thought. Would sharing the truth relieve the burden or deepen the regrets? Would honesty reign under the watchful eyes of those who had manipulated her life from the shadows? I'm scared, Caitlin whispered, her voice small now, and my heart broke for her. I don't know who to believe anymore. I'm right here, sweetheart, I said gently, nudging closer. Caitlin, all we have left is each other. Trust in that bond. You have strength and courage in your heart, even if it's buried beneath your fears. We can face this together. And in that moment, something profound shifted within Caitlin. The walls she had put up sagged, the flickering glimmer of hope sparking beneath the rubble her emotions had constructed. The officer took a step back, allowing her a sliver of room to breathe. You're not alone, he said quietly. Whatever you say or don't say will remain protected. We're here to support you. Caitlin inhaled shakily. Then, with trembling lips, she found her voice again. There are things I need to share, but what if it brings everything crashing down? Her gaze pierced through the air, searching for reassurance that I stepped toward her, intertwining my fingers with hers, grounding ourselves as one. If it brings it all crashing down, then we'll rise from the ashes. I promise you that. Truth is a weapon, Caitlin, one we can wield together against anything that seeks to hurt you. There was a moment of stillness, where the weight of uncertainty hung heavily over us, crystallizing into something gentle, a soft determination, a fragile bond forged in the fire of shared pain. You're my daughter, and my love for you is infinite. Slowly, Caitlin nodded and turned back to the officer, her entire being shifting toward a strength she never realized she carried. I'm ready to tell the truth, all of it, she declared, her voice steadying. I refuse to let them define who I am. And in that moment, I felt the warmth of renewal wash over us. The darkness that had threatened to swallow her began to recede as we embraced the light of resilience burgeoning from within. But then I felt a tug of apprehension as I sensed the threads of reality shifting around us. Because in that tide of newfound courage, something buried deep within me began to awaken. Two secrets I had safeguarded now threatened to resurface along with Caitlin's truth. The revelation I longed to protect seemed to rise alongside her own struggles, unfurling like a long-silenced wind spinning into a storm. Later that evening, past the confrontation with the officer and away from the mounting confusion surrounding us, I sat at the kitchen table, Caitlin quietly at my side. Mom, she finally spoke, taking a breath as she twisted her fingers nervously. When this is all over, I glanced at her, my heart swelling with love and trepidation. Yes? Are you going to tell me everything? About my dad, about your past? I need to understand how all of this fits together. The question hung in the air like an impending storm, and I knew that for every truth I unearthed about my past, her heart would swell with the burden of understanding not just the highs, but the harrowing lows, the secrets I often wished could stay buried. I had prepared my soul for this moment, yet just as I took a deep breath, a desperate plea forming out of nowhere, my phone buzzed once more, and suddenly my gut churned, anticipation and dread mingling as I braced myself for the notification that could strike the match to all we had worked to rebuild. When I read the message, the world around me crumbled, and I felt the icy fingers of fate grip me tightly. It was from a number I recognized but had ignored for years. It was a signal from the past I could no longer evade. Your past will find you, it read. Are you ready for the truth? Looking back at Caitlin, I recognized that we were teetering on the precipice, but this time, our journey would not end in fear. We were moving toward forgiveness and understanding, no longer contorted by the chains of the past. Mom, what is it? What did they say? I met her gaze, the mirror of a young girl who stood poised at the dawn of her own, awakening a spiral back to the beginning. It's the truth, I whispered softly, and it's time we embraced it together. As we sat there, palms intertwined, two souls steeled against the world outside, I felt a quiet assurance. The road ahead would be treacherous, but hand in hand, we would forge our own path, one guided by the light and warmth of love that remained our strongest resolve. Together, we would face the fires of our past. Together, we would find the power of our own voices. Together, And as I softly murmured the word, the beautiful breath of our new beginning lifted into the air, leaving a resonant echo that gently swirled around us, imbuing us with the strength to bloom once more. We are unbreakable, I whispered, my heart full of promise. In the face of everything, Caitlin nodded once more. Together, she agreed, and that single word felt like a soft echo of hope, the beginning of something entirely new.